You think you choose. You think you wake up and decide how your life will go, what to say, what to do, who to love, who to forgive. But here's the brutal truth. Most of the time, you're not choosing. Your mind is. And your mind is repeating an old script. Scientists have discovered something terrifying. The brain makes a decision before you're even aware of it. They've watched it happen in labs in controlled environments. Before you press a button, before you move your hand, before you say yes or no, the brain has already acted. Free will? It's mostly post-justification. We don't choose. We rationalize what's already been chosen. And this isn't just theory. Look at your own life. How many times have you said, I don't know why I keep doing this. I know better, but I still go back. I want to change, but I can't. That's not failure. That's programming. You're operating on automatic. Your behaviors are habits. Your reactions are preloaded. From childhood, your brain was trained. By trauma, by praise, by punishment. And now, even as an adult, that old programming is still pulling the strings. You think you have willpower, but your will is locked in a prison you can't see. You don't realize it because the cage was built inside you. It looks like logic. It sounds like your own voice. But it's not you. It's the mind's illusion, a fake freedom that keeps you stuck, looping the same cycles, making the same choices, living the same pain, and blaming yourself. So, the question is no longer, why can't I change? The real question is, who is in control? And until you confront that, you will mistake the script for your will, and the loop will continue. You weren't born afraid. You weren't born ashamed, guilty, or small. But before you turned 7, you were already programmed. Psychologists and neuroscientists agree. From birth to age 7, your brain operates mostly in a theta wave state, a hypnotic state, the same one adults enter under deep trance. That means children are not thinking critically. They are absorbing everything, every word, every tone, every silence. And here's the dark part. They don't just absorb information. They absorb meaning. A child doesn't hear. Mom is busy and distracted. The child feels, I must not be important. A child doesn't understand. Dad is angry because of work stress. The child believes, I did something wrong. Every look, every rejection, every withheld hug, it doesn't pass through logic. It enters directly into the subconscious. And from these moments, the blueprint of the self is drawn. You learn when love is given and when it's taken away. You learn when it's safe to speak and when it's better to disappear. And then you grew up, but your programming did not. That child, the one who watched carefully, who flinched when voices rose, who overperformed to earn affection, still lives inside you. And now as an adult, you wonder why you freeze when criticized. Why you overthink every word you say. Why you always feel like you're too much or never enough. It's not your personality. It's not weakness. It's conditioning. Your mind is running code it didn't choose. And unless you stop and question that code, unless you look back to see where it all began, you'll keep mistaking that programming for truth. The most dangerous lies are the ones you never knew were planted. And those seeds were sown when you were too young to speak, but old enough to feel. There's a part of you that wants to heal, to grow, to break the cycle. But there's another part, silent cunning, that pulls you backward. You set goals. You make promises. You dream of freedom. And then, just when you're about to leap, something sabotages everything. That voice that says, why bother? That's not for you. You'll fail again. You think it's fear. You think it's logic. But it's not. It's the saboteur. And the worst part? It lives inside you. This inner saboteur isn't random. It was built by years of pain, rejection, humiliation. Every time you were laughed at for trying, it recorded that pain. Every time someone dismissed you, hurt you, ignored your effort, it learned a lesson. Trying is dangerous. Visibility leads to pain. Success is not safe. So now, years later, it steps in not to destroy you, but to protect you. But its protection is twisted. It kills the dream before the world gets a chance to. It makes you procrastinate. It makes you scroll endlessly. It convinces you that now is not the time, that you're not ready, that you're not good enough. You think it's laziness. But really, it's fear in disguise. And here's the paradox. You trust this voice because it sounds like you. It doesn't shout. It whispers. So softly, you don't question it. But every time you obey it, you reinforce the cage. Every avoided risk, every silenced truth, every ignored gut feeling. The saboteur grows stronger, and you grow smaller. You wonder why you feel stuck, why nothing changes, why it's always almost. But the real enemy was never out there. It was never your past or people or luck. It was a program left behind, a ghost in your system, pretending to be you. And until you separate from it, you will keep living a life that protects your wounds, but buries your potential. Why do we keep ending up in the same pain, different faces, different places, but the same heartbreak, the same failures, the same regrets? It feels like life is mocking you, like no matter what you do, you end up back at the beginning. But this is not a coincidence. It's a pattern, and the mind loves patterns because patterns feel familiar. And what's familiar, even if it's painful, feels safe. That's the trap. Your subconscious isn't loyal to your potential. It's loyal to your programming, to what it already knows. So, if you were raised in chaos, calm feels uncomfortable. If love always came with pain, you'll chase the kind of love that hurts. If you were told you're not good enough, you'll find ways to prove it again and again, not because you want to suffer, but because part of you believes. This is how life works. It becomes a script, and you're the actor reciting your lines over and over again. Even when you try to change, you're pulled back, not by fate, not by bad luck, by your own mind, because the brain is wired to complete loops, to repeat stories, until they are rewritten. That's why awareness alone isn't enough. You can know your patterns. You can understand the past. But unless you interrupt the emotional repetition, the cycle continues. You leave the toxic relationship, only to find a new one with the same pain. You quit the job you hated, only to recreate the same burnout in the next. You think you're moving forward, but emotionally, you're still in the same place, because the story never changed, just the characters. And so you suffer again, not because you're broken, but because you're repeating. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility, because no one else can rewrite the script. Only you can interrupt the pattern. And that begins by asking, what am I recreating? And why does it feel safe and healing? What if I told you you're addicted to your pain, not because you enjoy it, but because somewhere along the way, it became familiar? Think about it. Why do we chase relationships that hurt us? Why do we repeat the same self-destructive behaviors? Why does anxiety feel normal and peace feel suspicious? Because your nervous system was trained early to expect chaos, to brace for impact, to find comfort in the discomfort. You didn't choose this, but your body, your mind adapted to survive. So now, even when you're free, you feel lost because safety feels foreign. And here's the cruel twist. Your mind is addicted to what it knows, not what it needs. You crave the anger, the drama, the emotional highs and lows, because that's what home felt like. Not calm, not safety, but emotional volatility. Your body got used to those chemicals. Cortisol, adrenaline, survival mode. So peace? Peace feels boring. Love without chaos feels unreal. That's why people push away good partners. Sabotage success. Run from quiet. Because quiet feels like a setup. Love feels like a trap. Happiness feels like a lie waiting to collapse. That's not intuition. That's conditioning. And the most painful addictions are the emotional ones we don't even see. You can quit substances. You can change your diet. But how do you quit a feeling? How do you stop craving the sadness that made you feel alive? the anger that gave you control, the anxiety that made you feel prepared. You don't beat it by force. You heal it by retraining your nervous system, by introducing peace, and staying long enough to make it familiar. You stop running. You sit with the quiet. You let love in, even when your instincts scream that it's unsafe. You choose the unfamiliar path, the one without drama, and you walk it over and over until your mind learns a new truth. I don't need pain to feel alive. I don't need chaos to feel worthy. I don't need to suffer to belong. The pain was never your home. It was just the prison you were raised in. There's a voice inside you, one that whispers when things go wrong, when they leave, when you fail, when everything falls apart. And that voice says, it's your fault. You weren't good enough. You should have tried harder. You're the reason it always ends this way. But here's what you don't realize. That voice isn't truth. It's a ghost of the past, of moments when your mind couldn't make sense of the pain. So it blamed the only person it could control. You, as a child, you needed the world to make sense. And if someone hurt you, ignored you, or abandoned you, you couldn't believe they were bad. So instead, your mind made you the problem. If I was better, they wouldn't yell. If I wasn't a burden, they wouldn't leave. If I was lovable, they'd have stayed. This was survival, because if it was your fault, then maybe, just maybe, you could fix it. You could be better, quieter, more perfect. But years later, that pattern still plays. You fail at something, you spiral. Someone ghosts you, you obsess. You make a mistake, you punish yourself. Because you've internalized a deadly lie, that your worth is based on your performance, that if you're not perfect, you're nothing. That love must be earned. That suffering is deserved. And the worst part, you think this is just who you are. But it's not. It's programming. It's emotional muscle memory. You're not too sensitive. You're just still healing from a world that taught you to hate your own emotions. You're not broken. You were just blamed for things that were never your fault. And here's the truth that your inner critic can't stand to hear. Not everything was your responsibility. Not everything that happened was because of you. Some people just failed you. And that is not your burden to carry anymore. You can put it down. You can forgive the child who thought it was all their fault. Because it wasn't. It never was. Stand in front of a mirror. Look into your own eyes. Who do you see? A victim? A survivor? A broken soul trying to put the pieces back together? Or do you see the person who's been standing in your way all along? Because here's the hardest truth of all. You are both the prisoner and the warden. Yes, others hurt you. They shaped you. They planted the pain. But you built the walls around it. You kept the cycle going. You became your own enemy without even realizing it. You silenced your needs. You sabotaged your dreams. You pushed away love because it felt too risky. You called it protection. You called it strength. But deep down it was fear. Fear that if you let go of the pain, you'd have nothing left to hold on to. So you clung to the story. I'm unlovable. I'm too much. I'll always be alone. Because that story was familiar. And familiar feels safe, even when it's killing you. But now here you are, and there's no one left to blame. No one else in the room. Just you and your reflection. The mirror doesn't lie. It shows the truth. Raw, uncomfortable, necessary. And the truth is this. If you want a different life, you have to become a different version of yourself. Not because you were never enough, but because the version you are today was built for survival, not for freedom. You're not fighting your parents anymore. You're not fighting your past. You're fighting the part of you that believes you don't deserve peace. But here's the shift. It's not a war. It's a reckoning, a conversation with your inner self, where you finally say, I'm done playing small. I'm done running. And I'm done blaming. From this moment on, it's you versus the version of you that was programmed to lose. And the only way out is through. It doesn't happen with a scream. It doesn't happen with fireworks. It happens in silence, in a moment no one else sees. When you're alone, when the noise has faded, when your reflection stares back at you and doesn't blink, that's when it starts. the death of the old you, the you who apologized for existing, the you who waited for someone else to save them, the you who mistook suffering for strength. This breaking point isn't glamorous. It's not beautiful. It's terrifying, because letting go of your pain means letting go of your identity. And you've worn it for so long. You forgot it was a costume. You thought your anxiety was your personality. You thought your need for control was your power. You thought your numbness was maturity. But none of that was real. It was armor. It was survival. And now, it's crumbling. You begin to question everything. Why do I chase love that hurts? Why do I fear being alone more than being unhappy? Why do I sabotage joy the moment arrives? These are not small questions. They are surgical. They cut deep into your wiring. And when the answers come, they don't come gently. They come with grief, with rage, with the sickening realization that you betrayed yourself. Over and over again, you tolerated what you should have walked away from. You stayed silent when you should have screamed. You gave pieces of yourself to people who never earned them. And suddenly it hits you. The person you've been running from, the one who kept you small, scared, and silent, was never someone else. It was you. But here's the thing about breaking. When the old self dies, the real you finally breathes. Not the perfect version, not the healed version, but the honest one, the one that knows pain and chooses power anyway, the one that's done pretending. Because when the breaking point comes, it doesn't just end a chapter. It burns the whole damn book. And from those ashes, you write a new story. One that begins with, "This time I choose me." This is where the real work begins. Not in the chaos, but in the quiet aftermath. After the storm has passed. After the illusions have shattered. After the old version of you has crumbled to dust. Now you begin again. But this time, you're not building a version of yourself to be accepted. You're not chasing love. You're not performing strength. You're becoming whole. Piece by piece, you begin to choose differently. You say no without guilt. You say yes without fear. You take up space unapologetically. You begin to trust your own voice, not the critical one that echoes from the past, not the fearful one that whispers from old wounds, but the one buried beneath it all, the one that always knew who you were. This voice isn't loud at first. It's a whisper, a breath, a nudge in the dark. But you listen and it grows. You stop asking, "What do they want from me?" and start asking, "What do I want to become?" And for the first time, the answer isn't survival. It's freedom. It's self-respect. It's peace. You no longer define your worth by how much pain you can carry. You don't wear suffering as a badge of honor. Instead, you let go of what was never yours to hold, of people who fed your insecurities, of stories that kept you small. You learn to rest, to breathe, to sit with your feelings instead of running from them. You begin to see healing not as a destination, but as a relationship with yourself. Some days you'll stumble. Old habits will return like ghosts, but now you recognize them. You name them, and you don't let them take over. Because now you know you are the author, you are the architect, you are the one in control. And every decision you make, every boundary you draw, every time you choose yourself, you're not just rebuilding. You're reclaiming your time, your power, your truth. You are not who you were. You're becoming who you were always meant to be. So here we are at the end of the journey. But really, this is not the end. It's the beginning, not of something new, but of something real. Because you've seen what was hiding. You've faced the shadows. You've peeled back the layers. And now you're looking into the mirror and seeing yourself. Not the version they molded. Not the version that performed to survive. Not the broken, lost, apologetic one. But you, raw, whole, alive. And you realize something. The pain wasn't a punishment. It was a compass, a signpost, a signal screaming, "Come back home. Home to your truth. Home to your voice. Home to the self you abandoned to be accepted. Yes, you were wounded. Yes, you made mistakes. But you're not broken. You were just carrying stories that weren't yours. Programming that was outdated. Shame that was never meant to be yours. Now, you're free to write a new script, not one built on fear, not one written to please others, but one that begins with, I am enough just as I am. You don't have to convince anyone. You don't have to beg to be seen. You don't have to prove your worth. You only have to remember it. This is what self-mastery looks like. Not perfection, but presence. Not being fearless, but walking forward anyway. Not needing control, but trusting yourself when there's none. This is not about becoming someone else. This is about returning to the self that always existed beneath the noise. And if you take just one truth with you from this journey, let it be this. You were never lost. You were just buried under fear, under pain, under the lies they told you. But now the dust is cleared, and the real you, the powerful, intuitive, limitless you, is standing. So go forward, not to escape yourself, but to become yourself. Because you don't need to be fixed. You only need to be free. And freedom begins in the mind.